Welcome to the Friday edition of Locked On Blue Jays. They got some massive decisions to make. Who is going to be the closer for this 2025 Toronto Blue Jays team?
You are Locked On Blue Jays, your daily Toronto Blue Jays podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jays. Thank you for making Locked On Blue Jays your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. As always, I'm Braden Wasco. He's Carter First. You can find us on Twitter, Braden5E Wasco. Carter First 2 as well on Instagram and TikTok at Locked On Blue Jays. If you're new here to YouTube or you're listening anywhere else, make sure you drop a subscription on the YouTube page so you can stay up to date on all the live streams, videos, shorts, reels, whatever you want to call them. Also, we got the Discord link down below. Please, if you have not already, please go donate to the Locked On Blue Jays Movember page. We're sort of growing them out. They're starting to come in anyway. It's for a good cause. If you got anything lying around, any spare change, whatever you got, go and donate it. It is a great cause. A lot to get into today on this episode of Locked On Blue Jays, this Friday edition. Of course, in the third segment, we've been doing these questions of the day a little bit more often, so we'll get into those. But we got to talk about some players being non-tendered. Plus, in the second segment, who is going to be the closer for this Toronto Blue Jays team? We'll talk about all that. Carter, let's kick things off and talk about some of the guys that might get non-tendered.
Yeah, we'll start it off with, if some people aren't familiar with the definition of non-tendered and what that implies, I'll just jump into it right here. So pretty much, long story short, just getting right to the point is, these players have to be under arbitration. They have to be, not qualified for free agency. And non-tender pretty much means that they're not going to offer them a contract for the next season. So some of the names that have been included in this is Erik Swanson, Jordan Romano, and Dylan Tate from Ben Nicholson Smith. And just another blurb to this non-tender is players on the 40-man roster with fewer than 6 years of Major League service time must be tendered contracts by the offseason set deadline, which I believe is at the end of November or start of December. So, yeah, let's get right into it. Jordan Romano being in there, Erik Swanson being in there, Dylan Tate, again, not as valuable as those other two. But when we're going into the 2024 season, Jordan Romano was your closer. Erik Swanson, again, maybe Chad Green's in the mix as well. Probably your setup guy, or at least your third most reliant reliever. Now we're at a point where Jordan Romano is in the talks of being non-tendered, not offering him a contract extension. Erik Swanson, again, they don't want to go to arbitration with them. There's an option to cut ties with these two guys. But kind of the same notion that we had with Genesis Cabrera. Genesis Cabrera, again, I don't think he's nearly as good as Jordan Romano or Erik Swanson. But if you're going to cut Jordan Romano and Erik Swanson along with Dylan Tate, who's left on your bullpen? A ton of moves are expected to be made for the bullpen. But that would leave us with Chad Green. That would leave us with Brendan Little. Tommy Nance would be a guy as well. Not necessarily some guys that you want to rely on down the stretch.
Carter, this is just a ridiculous conversation. You know what? I was a little bit taken aback when we talked about Henny and him not being re-signed by the Blue Jays. This a little bit blows my mind of the thought process that you're not going to bring back at least Erik Swanson and Jordan Romano. I think these two guys are a shoo-in. I know some people out there don't like some of these guys, but at the end of the day, you're not going to find many guys better than Jordan Romano. And Erik Swanson, a down year, but I mean, I have full faith that he's going to bounce back. And I mean, there was a lot that happened in this season with the two of them. Injuries, I don't think they let Jordan Romano's injury heal completely, and they brought him back too early. And of course, then it hampered him for the rest of the year. Erik Swanson had the situation with his son happen, brutal situation. And this never really got into the season, had a bad stretch, and then came back towards the end of the year and looked pretty good. Carter, I want to go over what their arbitration numbers would be just before we sort of continue on. So Jordan Romano is probably looking at $7.75 million. Erik Swanson looking at $3.2 million. Dylan Tate looking at $1.9 million. And the Erik Swanson $3.2 million for me, Carter, is the easiest decision of all time. That $3.2 million for Erik Swanson, easily give it to him. Get him in that bullpen. You want a guy that's very solid in the seventh and eighth inning, yeah. And that can pitch very well. And Erik Swanson has proven that he can be that guy. Yes, with a down season last year, but I mean, if we're taking guys on their down years, half the Blue Jays team wouldn't be re-signed. So it's just ridiculous to me that we're having this conversation. And Jordan Romano is a whole nother piece, and I'll get into him after. But the Erik Swanson one, Carter, does it blow you away as much as it blows away me?
It just doesn't really make any sense when the guy's projected for $3.2 million in arbitration. Again, we were surprised when Cabrera was released as well, and this guy was only slightly lower than Erik Swanson's projected arbitration. I got the date here; it's November 22nd is when they're going to have to decide if these guys are non-tendered. So that's coming up very quickly. The day that this is going to be released is November 8th. It's 2 weeks. It's 2 weeks before you have to make a decision on how this bullpen is going to end up looking. And we talked about this a ton throughout the season. Again, when you look at Erik Swanson, 2022, 2023, unbelievable years. There's a reason why they traded Teoscar Hernandez for this guy from the Mariners. He's not a bad pitcher. He's very good. He's very reliable for the majority of the time. Again, we talked about his son in the offseason. We talked about injuries. With Erik Swanson, he looked way better throughout the second half of the season as well. With a Toronto Blue Jays bullpen that was debatably the worst bullpen in all of baseball. Looking at Erik Swanson, it's absolutely laughable to me that you would even think about non-tendering a guy that's, again, only projected to make around $3.2 million. Yes, it can go higher. Yes, it can go lower. But we look at the open market. There hasn't been a lot of free agency moves yet, but Liam Hendriks was signed for $3 million. I think Erik Swanson absolutely blows Liam Hendriks out of the water if we're talking about monetary value here. And with Erik Swanson coming off of that a little bit of a down year, you would be able, you think at least they'd be able to have some negotiation here. Maybe you get Erik Swanson at a little bit lower than that arbitration value. When we talk about Erik Swanson, is it really necessarily worth him, negotiating $200,000 for a guy like Erik Swanson that I think is going to be a very important piece for the Toronto Blue Jays bullpen in 2025? At this point, is it even worth battling with a guy, arguing with a guy over a monetary value that isn't really going to change things at the end of the day?
Carter, my biggest component in these conversations has to be, are you going to go and find 5 or 6 bullpen pieces, quality bullpen pieces? Absolutely not. That is a ridiculous thing to think. We always say that, a bullpen is built on the diamonds in the roughs. That's how you build a great bullpen. You get lucky. Nobody is going out and making sure that these guys are all nasty all the time. That just doesn't happen in a bullpen. So you have to pay your guys that you know are very steady and you know what they can do, i.e., in saying Jordan Romano and Erik Swanson, 2 guys that are usually very steady guys. You pay them, you take a shot on 2 to 3 players, and you hope that they pan out. And you make decisions with those 2. Maybe you trade piece for later on. Maybe you bring a guy up, something like that. But you need the stability pieces. And Jordan Romano not being not being in this bullpen to me is just absolutely ludicrous, especially at $7.75 million. I mean, again, it's a pretty penny, but we've seen what Jordan Romano can do. Yes, again, down season last year, didn't play very well. I don't think was fully healed from his injury, or didn't look like it anyway.
Yeah, I'm going to backtrack to Erik Swanson quick, and then I'll go into the Jordan Romano stuff. I just wanted to let the people know how good this guy was at the end of the year compared to at the start of the year. So pre and post All-Star break, a pre-All-Star break, again, Erik Swanson was not good. Injuries, things like that, bad off-season or bad spring training, didn't really have the ability to kind of get that ramp up. Pre-All-Star break, this guy had a 3.18 opponent average, a 1.7 whip. The ERA was ridiculous at 9.2. Obviously, that's not going to play. But you get post-All-Star break, you get Erik Swanson getting his confidence back in AAA, kind of ramping up and getting regular Erik Swanson numbers, 2.55 ERA post-All-Star break, 172 opponent average post-All-Star break, 1.01 whip post-All-Star break. These numbers are significantly down when you look at Erik Swanson, and he pitched more innings post-All-Star break. So when based off history, based off 2022, 2023, based off the second half of the season, you were seeing what Erik Swanson is. Why would you go with the small sample size of 4 months relatively and just completely throw away the last 2.5 years of Erik Swanson's career? It wouldn't make any sense for me to move on from Erik Swanson. When we get into Jordan Romano, the monetary value, when you look at the rest of this bullpen, Chad Green, you're paying, again, a $21 million option over the 2 seasons. That's about $10.5 million per year. When you look at Jordan Romano, a projected arbitration of $7.75, this kind of all comes back to the injury. And this is something they might be worried about and might be something that they're monitoring. Because you get Jordan Romano, you get him throwing 98, 99. That's where Jordan Romano is going to be successful. That is what you need from Jordan Romano. And we saw a little bit of this from Tim Meza. Unfortunately, with Jordan Romano, again, it's not an injury problem with Tim Meza, but the same thing. If you have Jordan Romano going down 5-6 miles per hour, when you see him throwing 93, 94, 95, where we kind of saw him while he was probably injured again playing throughout the season, Jordan Romano is not very effective. He gets significantly worse being a 2-pitch pitcher if he's only going to throw 94, 95. So with the Jordan Romano stuff, again, when you have regular Jordan Romano, a top 5 saves leader for the previous 3 seasons before this injury season, it's one of those things, again, is are you really going to find somebody better on the market rather than seeing Jordan Romano? So unless they're seeing this guy throw and they're seeing the velo being down and they're a little bit cautious about that, at that point, I'd be more on board with Jordan Romano and being in this discussion of being non-tendered. But if you get regular Jordan Romano back that's throwing 98 and has a wipeout slider that's making people swing like the garden hose meme that we talk about from MLB The Show, it would just absolutely blow my mind with all the bullpen moves you already have to make to restructure this bullpen.
That's what I mean. It comes down to the fact that you're not going to find anybody better. You're really not. And I fully believe, I know we've talked about the injury. He said he's going to be having plenty of time to recover, fully recover. The problem is they obviously tried to rush him back because the team was struggling and it didn't work out. And then he ended up getting re-injured or re-aggravating the injury and going down. And that cost him the season. And I think with a full season of quality, healthy Jordan Romano, I think you're looking at a fantastic year from him, probably way back up in the top 5-7 in saves. And just because Jordan Romano is that guy. He will not blow a ton of saves. He will just, he might allow a run. If you're up 2, he'll probably allow 1, but still get you the save. He'll still get the job done. And at the end of the day, that's all you need from your closer is to get the job done. And he's a guy and a piece that can consistently do that. So at the end of the day, Carter, I think it's just, this is an absolutely ludicrous conversation even that we're having to have. These guys are not costing you a ton of money. You have to be able to lock them in and have stability in the bullpen. If you don't have that, you can't afford to take long shots on a bunch of other arms that you're going to have to sign 5, 6, 7 of them. That just cannot happen. This is like line in the sand. If these 2 guys don't get non-tendered, Carter, I don't know. I think the Blue Jays have a nothing bullpen this season.
Well, and just going over Jordan Romano's stats from last season, again, injuries hampered him, things like that. Obviously, a little bit of a down year as well. 6.59 ERA, a 13.2 innings pitched, 13 Ks over those 13.2 innings, a whip of 1.46. And all I'm going to do is just compare this, is go over his career stats. Jordan Romano's been in the league for a while. He's 31 years old. He's had multiple seasons under his belt. 231 games, a 2.9 ERA over 229.2 innings pitched, 285 strikeouts. It's over a strikeout per inning, and a 1.14 whip. So Jordan Romano, again, we're not going to say that he's going to go out there and go perfectly up and down, 3 in, 3 out, whatever. Jordan Romano is that type of guy that, again, we went over this before during the season, that maybe he does give up some runs from time to time, but who cares if you're winning a baseball game 4-1 or 4-3? The point is you won the baseball game. As long as you're getting the results, as long as this guy is finishing off at-bats, getting himself out of these jams, again, you don't love it when he's playing with fire. It's definitely keeping you on the edge of your seat more so than you would like. But it does give you a little bit of entertainment. Again, makes the game a little bit more interesting. And as long as you're getting the wins, I'm not going to be a guy that's going to go against Jordan Romano. Then there's one more guy in this non-tender discussion. This is a guy that I can see more likely as being non-tendered, and that is Dylan Tate. Kind of took a shot on him later on in the season. My only argument against that is why even bring him in then? If you're going to take a shot on Dylan Tate near the last month of the season, again, maybe you just want him to bolster the bullpen. The bullpen couldn't have got much worse, obviously, at the end of that season. This wouldn't really make a lot of sense to bring a guy like that in if you're just going to non-tender him in the months of November anyway.
No, I don't really understand that either, to be honest. I thought that this would have been a pretty easy one. Again, you're not having to pay him a ton. Again, it's 1.9. It's not nothing, but it's less than you were going to have to pay Henny, and you let him walk. So in the same respect, why would you not pay him to lock down another piece? Hopefully he can do something. But again, if the Blue Jays aren't seeing something in him, they haven't seen a ton. If they didn't see what they want to see, I'm also okay with not bringing him back. So do what you got to do with that one. Dylan Tate, I'm sort of whatever with. I think the Blue Jays are going to do what they're going to do. I think if you don't bring back Jordan Romano and Erik Swanson, this is a huge, huge issue going into 2025.
Well, the problem with this Jordan Romano, especially Jordan Romano talk, Erik Swanson, if they non-tender this guy, I see that as being absolutely insane. With Jordan Romano, Ross Hawkins has come out and said he's not even sure if he wants this guy to come back as the closer. He doesn't know what his role is going to be going into that next season. So that's going to be a big discussion. Unless Ross Atkins is deciding that he's going to say, screw the luxury tax, I'm going to go over it, and we're going to sign 7 bullpen arms, which in that sense, if you want to let Jordan Romano go and sign 7 other guys that you think are going to be better than Jordan Romano, sure, do that. But from what we've seen from the Ross Atkins era, the Mark Shapiro era, they're not going to go much over that luxury tax, if at all. So with getting rid of Jordan Romano, again, we'd say the same thing with Henny Cabrera, and Jordan Romano is a better bullpen arm than Henny Cabrera. I don't think that's up for debate. It feels like if you do that, you're taking another step back with this bullpen rather than going forward. But we do want to get into this closer discussion. We're going to kind of break down what Ross Atkins has said about this battle as we're going to get into this offseason and then spring training. So we're going to take a short break and come at you guys with that. Today's episode is sponsored by Ibotta. Winter is on the horizon, and it's time to stock up. Whether that means stocking up on some snow removal equipment, especially being from Canada, or swapping out your summer clothes for new winter clothes, make sure you're using Ibotta when you can get real cash back with every purchase. You're taking that dream vacation this winter, but dreading the cost. With Ibotta, you can get cash back on all your purchases, just so you can spend more time making memories this summer and less time dreaming about them. The average Ibotta user earns $256 per year. That could cover the cost of an entire shopping trip, buy that flight you've been eyeing, or that game you've been dying to go to. Other apps give you points that don't amount to much. With Ibotta, just add your offers in the app, upload your receipt, and you can get real cash that you can cash out to your bank account, PayPal, or gift cards. Join the over 50 million savers and earn cash back every time you shop from over 2,700 brands and retailers, including Lowe's, Macy's, Sephora, Best Buy, and more. Right now, Ibotta is offering listeners $5 just for trying Ibotta and using the code LOCKEDONMLB when you register. Just go to the App Store or Google Play Store and download the free Ibotta app to start earning cash back and use code LOCKEDONMLB. That's IBOTTA in the Google Play or App Store and use code LOCKEDONMLB.
Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, because right now new customers can bet $5, get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So I always talk about it. Those live game parlays, those live game bets, I like to watch to see if anything, there's a stat that's, okay, this guy's popping off the page. Let me bet that. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. I have been killing it on the NFL. I'm telling you guys, this is the time. There's some clear gems in there. I'm telling you, go check it out. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. So, Carter, who in the world would have thought that we would be having a discussion of who would be the closer and who would be some of the relievers for this team? I thought some of them were going to be written in stone here. I thought everybody knew what was going on. But apparently that's not the case.
Yeah, not at all. Ross Atkins comes out and says Jordan Romano has not been guaranteed the closer role. He's going to have to earn it in spring training, which, again, with the injury, this makes me feel like they're really worried about Jordan Romano and that velocity dip before the shoulder injury that he did have. Again, kept him out for the entire season. So, again, major injury. You didn't see Jordan Romano really at all throughout 2024. Again, 13.2 innings pitched. It's not necessarily what you want from your closing pitcher. So the Toronto Blue Jays have come out and they said they want to be aggressive in the reliever market. They kind of want to abandon the safety net that they've had before. They're not going to, again, rest guys as much for the beginning of the season. They want to go all in, and they're going to be more aggressive in the free agent market for these relievers. And just an indication of that is Ross Atkins picked up Chad Green's $21 million option, and that was the biggest bullpen deal by this front office, I think, ever, by Ross Atkins and Mark Shapiro, the #1, the highest rated bullpen option that they've ever given out. So that does take us a step in the right direction. That does, at least for us, make it seem like Ross Atkins does want to address this bullpen. And when we talk about this closer role, I'm very set on, I want Jordan Romano back on this team. I'm sort of with Ross Atkins here a little bit. If he has that velocity drop, if it's not coming out as regular Jordan Romano, if you want to add a guy on the market that's going to be a closer, Tanner Scott's there, Carlos Estevez, there's multiple options. Clay Holmes, again, didn't look that good in the closer role. If you want to at least get someone to compete with Jordan Romano and have that safety net option as a guy that could be the closer down the stretch if Jordan Romano isn't kind of coming back to form, I don't think that's the worst idea.
Yeah, I'm sort of torn a little bit. I understand the thought process of having a safety net, but it depends how much you're willing to pay. We talk about it. If they're not wanting to go over this luxury tax, you have $50 million. 50 million. If you want to get a guy like Anthony Santander or Glaber or Soto or any of these guys, that's half or more of what you're willing to spend. You don't have enough to go and pay a very solid guy. When you have Jordan Romano, who is a known asset to this bullpen in that closing role, I don't see a situation where he is not your closer. I don't think this is a good decision. I think you're right. Barring the velocity drop, I don't think that that's going to be in question. I fully believe that he wasn't 100% healthy coming in last season off the injury and then back on the injury. I fully believe with enough time here from when he took the injury to the start of next season, we are going to see Jordan Romano back like he never left. And I really don't believe that this is going to be a problem. Anybody who says that Jordan Romano is washed, whatever, he was never your issue besides outside of last year. And I have no reason to doubt him. When Jordan Romano has been healthy, which is a lot of the time, he has shown no issues to me besides last season when he was hurt, I fully believe. So I don't understand this. I don't think you can afford to go pay another guy $12 million to come and be a closer for this team. I just don't think that's a realistic option.
That's the problem when we talk about this luxury tax bracket and this the Ross Atkins era. He has not gone over the luxury tax, and if he has, it's been at most like $5 million. He's not willing to spend a crazy amount over this luxury tax. And the Jordan Romano, again, I think he had a shoulder injury at the start of the season. The elbow impingement was the one that kept him out for the majority of the season. So it just kind of comes down to how confident they are in Jordan Romano. I'll be the first one to admit it. God forbid, I hope Ross Atkins knows more about Jordan Romano's state than we do right now on this podcast. And I hope he does have a plan if he isn't as confident with Jordan Romano. I'm going to give him I'll read the quote that he did say about this closer situation. He says, "I don't know. We have some guys that are currently on the roster that have certainly done it before, and they will certainly be in potential to do it again." So if you're looking at this roster, like Chad Green, that's the only guy. Other than that, Swanson, you could throw in there. He has a history of not being that good in that closer role. Is that a guy that you want in that closer role, especially with the history? Again, maybe you're hoping for a bounce back season from Erik Swanson, but from what we've seen from Ben Nicholson-Smith and some of these guys that are covering the Toronto Blue Jays, they're not too inclined to even bring Erik Swanson back. That's still a question mark that they even bring this guy back on this team. So when we're looking at this roster, I'd rather have Jordan Romano go out than Chad Green personally. I think he's going to be a better closer than Chad Green will be. So I'm going kind of back to where I was before. If it's not outside the organization, it's not Tanner Scott, it's not Carlos Estevez, it's not a guy that you're signing a bigger contract in free agency, I don't really see this role changing at all, at least being as effective as Jordan Romano was throughout his career.
No, I agree. I think if we're looking internally, yeah, Chad Green is an option for sure. I think he does do the job, but I think I would rather have Chad Green in a 7-8 situation than have him pitch in the 9th and have to replace Jordan Romano. I think you saw how bad this bullpen was when Jordan Romano wasn't good and wasn't available. So I think this is a guy that you have to lean on, and you give him all the credit in the world that he can do it like he's done before. I don't think you question him. I think as soon as you question him, you're putting everything in that bullpen in doubt. Jordan Romano is your best piece to that bullpen. And if you don't have faith in him, you are showing that you don't have faith in a single player to come out of that bullpen. So I think that this was a weird statement to come out. I don't like it at all. I think that this shows how questionable this management group is of not having a hot clue what they want to do right now. I think everything is up in the air, and also nothing is up in the air. They don't know left from right now, and that's what I fully believe.
See, unless Ross Atkins surprises us and just decides that the luxury tax isn't a thing and he's just going to pay whoever, whatever, then sure, this might be a very fun offseason in that sense. And I would love if they would sign Alex Bregman, 5 bullpen arms, maybe a starting pitcher, you name it. This team needs a lot of different positions. They need a lot of help from different organizations and free agency. So if he wants to abandon the luxury tax, for sure, we're going to be the first ones to be like, oh, this is going to be awesome. For sure, if Jordan Romano's not the closer, you probably brought somebody better in. And if that's the case, if somebody just is going to perform better than Jordan Romano, I'm not going to be the guy to say, oh, just because Jordan Romano is a longer tenured Blue Jay, blah, blah, blah. No, you want your best option out there. So if Ross Atkins is going to do this, but we haven't seen him abandon this plan at all. But again, Ross Atkins hasn't been on the hot seat like he has this season. So maybe Ross Atkins does a complete 180 and surprises us during this offseason. But with Jordan Romano, again, if you're looking at Chad Green, you're looking at Erik Swanson. If you're looking internally, I don't see a scenario where Jordan Romano is going to be worse off than some of these guys that you're trying to throw in.
No, and I totally agree with you. If we're saying screw the luxury tax, then okay, I'm in. Maybe they got a clue. But right now at these, and you're saying you're looking internally for this option, I don't know where in the world you would be looking. So it's a big question of what they're going to do and what they can afford to do. And we'll have to wait and see. I have full faith in Jordan Romano. I really do. But I am with you. If they're going to abandon luxury tax and they say, okay, we're going to go out and spend $12 million, but we're also going to spend over here and over here and over here, then fair enough. I'm in the wrong, and I'll put my hand up and say, okay, I was wrong on that one, and I have faith in this team. But right now, with some of these quotes that are coming out, Carter, I don't know what their plan is. And I think that that's a bad thing if guys like me and you who cover this team every day don't know necessarily what the plan is going to be. I think that's an issue.
And the only other thing that we haven't really considered yet is if they do decide to non-tender Dylan Tate, Erik Swanson, and Jordan Romano. Again, these are the $50 million is projected with the arbitrations included. So I guess in that sense, you would save $10 to $13 million. But again, that's one bullpen arm compared to 3 bullpen arms. So you're kind of, with this notion, taking a step back rather than going forward. You need to make more moves in free agency rather than less. And I don't think that's a recipe for success when the bullpen was as bad as it was. But again, maybe Ross Atkins said, oh, this bullpen was so horrible that we need to revamp the entire thing. But at that point, is there enough money to go around? So the big major things with this is Jordan Romano going to come back and be like the guy he was in 2022, 2023? Is Erik Swanson going to make those strides? Do they bring back Dylan Tate is really the only question there. He's not going to be a high leverage guy. And is Ross Atkins willing to spend a ton of money this offseason and kind of abandon what he has said previously? Because obviously it has not worked. What he's done previously has not gotten Toronto Blue Jays a playoff win. I don't count 2016 every time I do this Ross Atkins stuff because that wasn't the team that he made. It's time to put up or shut up for Ross Atkins.
Totally, man. That's what we've been saying for the past little bit here. You're on the hot seat. Let's see what you can do. And I think if you're really trying to secure your job, I mean, again, he's probably getting told from the higher ups that he can't spend over that luxury tax or has a certain pay to work with. But if I was him, I would be doing everything in my power to make sure that this team is good next season. But we'll see what he can do. At the end of the day, Carter, that's all we can do. We just react and talk about the stuff coming out. In saying that, we have a bit like a 2-part question of the day sort of to get into here. So we'll take a quick break. We'll be right back with that. It's sort of a fun one, I think it'll get you thinking, at least in terms of free agency this year. So it is a great question of the day. Keep those coming. If you guys got a question, put QOTD before your question. We'll make sure we answer it on one of the podcasts coming up. We'll be right back.
Today's episode is also sponsored by Robinhood. With Robinhood Gold, you don't need a silver spoon to eat up the financial favors of the 1%. Robinhood Gold allows others to get the rates and perks usually reserved for the high society. Now, the resourceful individual with Robinhood Gold can earn the very liberal rate of 4.5% APY on uninvested cash and will be rewarded with a handsome 3% retirement boost on an IRA account. Robinhood Gold provides the privileges of a high net worth for any net worth. These generous benefits are now available for only $5 a month. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. Sign up at robinhoodgold.com/gold. Terms apply. For product-specific disclosures, visit robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risks. Rate may change. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold, LLC.
So, Carter, question of the day time. What do we got for that big 2-parter for today's question?
Yeah, first time I think ever that we're going to have a 2-part question, and they kind of just stem from they can correlate with each other. It's very similar questions, but we're just going to answer this in 2 parts. So the question is, what is the most important position in baseball? I'll let you answer this one first.
Oof, that is a tough one. I sort of was going back and forth in this when me and you sort of discussed this beforehand a little bit. So there's a couple thoughts here. If we're talking positional players, I think your 2 most important positions are debatably your shortstop and your catcher. But outside of that, I think your pitcher is probably the most important player in baseball. They control what happens in that entire game. If their stuff is on, a lot of the guys might not see a ton of hard hit balls, might not see a ton of stuff. So I'm going to say the pitcher, barring if you don't count the pitcher and you want to say somewhere else, I think it's debatable either your shortstop, who can take some plays away, make those big ones, make those big turns, whatever you want to say, or your catcher. He's the guy that controls the infield. He has a lot of say in what happens on the diamond as well.
Yeah, I think it's got to be pitcher, and then it's probably got to be catcher. If you have a good performance from a pitcher and you have a good game plan from a catcher, who cares about defense? If you can strike out a bunch of guys, get some soft contact, MLB players are fundamentally sound. They're going to be able to make the easy plays the majority of the time. So I think you're completely ahead. You got that nail in the head for the pitcher. It's got to be a pitcher. If you, again, have gross stuff, doesn't really matter the rest of them. But other than catcher, I'm going to go center field rather than shortstop. If you have a Daulton Varsho out there, I think you can get away with putting a guy in right and left field that's not necessarily as defensively sound with a guy like Daulton Varsho's range. If he can get to every single ball, you're not really relying on your corner outfielders nearly as much with your shortstop. A lot of the infield balls that are nice plays for me are just hard hit balls. So again, I think the center fielder gets, I have nothing to back this up. I feel like a center fielder gets more balls than the shortstop. You can correct me if I'm wrong in the comment section, but I would go center field rather than shortstop. But honestly, every position on the baseball field is important.
Yeah. And it is sort of, this next part of the question, Carter, sort of stems from a few comments we got, but let's jump into that one, because this one really sort of got me thinking too.
Yeah, so we've already talked about the positions of need on the Toronto Blue Jays, but we haven't really gone into depth about which one we think is by far the most important for the Jays. So this part 2 of the question is, what is the most important position of need for the Toronto Blue Jays going into 2025? I'll give you the floor for this one as well.
Yeah, so this comes down to availability. Who is available at each position? Because, I mean, really the 3 biggest ones for me here is we're talking about needing a couple extra bats and strong bats. So where are the strongest bats going to fit in this lineup? There, I would say third base is a very important position. I don't necessarily know that second base is as much of a need because you can platoon a lot of guys there. Your third base is important, but I think a lot of the bats looking at this free agency are the outfielders. And if you can get a great outfield bat that can play, left or right or wherever you're going to put them, I think that is the positional need, because that's the position that can probably give you the strongest bat. So that is where my thought process is going. I know we got a comment from Justin, sort of making fun of one of the posts, but the question was supposed to be sort of which position do you think is the most important, which this question is. Not, yes, obviously your outfield or your fielder, your third base, and your second base are the targeted positions, like they said. But which of those is your most important? And I think looking at what's available, I would have to say the outfield position, Carter.
Yeah, when I look at this, I look at who's available on the free agency market and also who you have in the organization. Who would be the bug guy playing at that position if you don't do anything this offseason? So we look at third base. That's probably Ernie Clement's position. Alex Bregman would be the top guy that you could get. Obviously, a very significant upgrade. Second base, the defensive side of it, I don't think it matters as much. I think you can really plug and play a guy at second base. They don't need that good of an arm. Again, you would like range at second base. You want him to be able to turn double plays, things like that. But I feel like you can hide a guy at second base a little bit better than you could at third base. But when we look at the outfield, if Daulton Varsho isn't back at the start of the season, which is not looking like, but for this scenario, we'll leave Daulton Varsho there. Who's your left fielder right now? Davis Schneider, maybe? Joey Loperfido, maybe. Like, there's not a lot of options there. And when you can get a guy like Juan Soto, again, that's a massive jump. Are they going to get Juan Soto? We've kind of already talked about that. But I think your biggest ability to increase a positional need on this team right now is at left field. I think your floor isn't necessarily where I want it to be, and the upside is at an all-time high with who's available on the market.
Yeah, so we're sort of thinking the same thing here. That left field spot for this team is very upgradable. And not to take away anything from the guys we have, like David Schneider and Joey Loperfido, but if you can go out and get a guy like Anthony Santander, Juan Soto, whoever it might be, I think that's a big upgrade. And then you can platoon guys at second base. I mean, David Schneider, Ernie Clement, Spencer Horwitz, there's lots of options to then plug and place guys at 2. So I think that is the biggest option here for the Toronto Blue Jays. Let us know what you guys think. If you think that third base needs to be filled, then you let us know that. If you think second base is a huge priority, then let us know. If you think starting pitching is a super big need for this team, let us know. Whatever you guys think, we always love hearing the comments and getting those. Carter, before we kick out of here, any last words from you?
Yeah, I guess I got one more question. How are you guys feeling right now? Because me and Braden are kind of going through the blender right now. I'm starting to get over a sickness a little bit. I might have given it to Braden. If you guys don't know, we live in the same apartment. So just around this time with, the winter coming, how are you guys feeling sick right now, or is it just an us thing? I've kind of been battling through this. Didn't want to dread on it too much because I know we're on a podcast. Again, the voice is suffering a little bit, but it is what it is, obviously, at this point. Just wanted to check in on the people. Like, how are you guys feeling right now as we get farther into November?
Yeah, man, I'm wiped too. I know we sort of had this conversation. You're more sick than I am for sure. You're feeling it, but yeah, just a little bit drained. I think it's that time of the year. It's getting dark out pretty early too, so that doesn't help. I think you just feel exhausted some of the day. Maybe that's just me. Let us know too. Sometimes we come on the podcast and we just want to talk about whatever as well. That's why the sort of the beauty of this third segment. We can have some fun, have some sort of different conversations. Let us know, again, what we talked about today. It was a lot of information, and I know that coming down the pipeline of sort of what's going to happen in 2025. And I think that's part of, like what Carter said, of being in the blender, because even I think our emotions toward the Toronto Blue Jays are there. We're not sure how to feel. Let us know what you guys think as well. We always appreciate you guys watching, making us your first listen. If you want to make somebody your second listen, go check out Locked On MLB with host Paul Sullivan. Sully runs a great show over there covering all the offseason moves as well. Again, as always, have a great weekend, guys. Be safe. Don't do anything too dumb or not dumb, or at least not anything more dumb than what we would do, which isn't saying a lot. Anyway.
Let's try to get cure our sickness and get like a Juan Soto, get a Santander, get a Bregman. I think I'll feel a whole lot better if we can get one of those guys. Thank you guys for watching. We'll talk to you guys on Monday.